Welcome to The Kingstonian, a podcast that profiles individuals who are passionate about what they do for a living, about what organization they belong to, or simply passionate about the community they are a part of. Hello there, and welcome. My name is Dave Cunningham. And today we are doing a live episode for the middle of November 2018, and we're very happy to have as our guest today Jim Gilchrist, who is the radio voice of the Ontario Hockey League's Kingston Frontenacs. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Dave. Pleasure being here.
You have done this sort of thing for 40 years, broadcasting hockey games.
Yes, sir.
2,700 plus games. That's a lot of work. Some people call you the Dean of the O.H.L. hockey broadcasters. What do you think of that moniker?
Somebody asked me, what does that mean? I said, just that I'm old. That's basically, I'm old, yes. I guess pretty well when you look around at the broadcasters who are doing it now in the O.H.L., I have been doing it the longest, so I guess that's where the Dean comes in, or the, as a fellow from Cornwall used to call me here just recently, the Godfather. Now I think that's carrying it a tad too far there. I'll take the Dean over the Godfather. Thank you very much.
Now, does this title come with any benefits?
No, absolutely none. So that's the other thing too. I'll gladly take it, but come on, give me some stuff here.
It does mean that you are passionate about what you do. If you're going to be doing this sort of thing for as long as you've been doing it, you have a passion for doing it. And we're going to cover a few different areas that I think the listeners would be interested in finding out about how you do your job and some of the things that do come up. But let's go back to the beginning, and we were just talking about that before we went on the air. How did you get started? And did radio come first and then the hockey broadcasts, or?
Yeah, the broadcasting came first. I got, I was just telling you off air here, that started actually at a radio station in Oshawa, where I'm originally from, Whitby, Oshawa area, and started there when I was just in my last couple of years of high school. And just doing part-time work there at the radio station, did everything, a little bit of everything there, and finally got a break going on air doing news, weather every half hour or so. And then my big break, though, came just after I graduated from high school in 72. About a month after that, an opening came up in the sports department. The sports director took me on as assistant sports director and to help him out doing the Oshawa Generals games, and that was in 1972. And I was there until 1980 with the Generals, and then came down here to Kingston when, here again, it was just a happen chance meeting with Max Jackson. You want to talk Dean, there was a Dean right there of broadcasting the Kingston Canadians games at the time. We met at a O.H.L. banquet and award ceremony in Toronto just the night before the O.H.L. draft, which they held in person. Now it's all done over the computer, of course. And was done in person there. He said he was going to be leaving doing the Kingston Canadian games because his wife, unfortunately, was quite ill with cancer at that time, so he wanted to stay home more, didn't want to travel around as much. So put in a tape, send down a tape. Here we go.
This is a reel-to-reel.
This is 1980, yes. This is reel-to-reel. This was 1980. So send down a tape. He gave me, Carl Cogan was the gentleman's name, program director at that time. So send him the tape and go from there. And got a call back from Carl about in August that time. Came down for an interview, and a couple of days later, they phoned back to let me know that I got the job. So.
Now, there have been various editions of the Kingston team over the years, so just run through those.
Yep, it started out in 73, 74 in the OHA Major Junior A, as it was known at that time. Kingston Canadians had moved from Montreal Junior Canadians to Kingston here by a group of businessmen here in town. And it was that way until 89, 90, when they became or 88, 89, pardon me, when they became the Kingston Raiders for 1 year, because all these gentlemen had sold the team to a gentleman from Peterborough, Lou Kozowski, and he was threatening to move the team, that they weren't getting enough people in, and he was threatening to move the team all over the place. He didn't have anywhere in mind, I don't think, but he was threatening to move the team out of Kingston anyway. So Ren Blair, who is organized with the old Eastern Pro Hockey League, Kingston Frontenacs, and Bobby Addersley, who was that time was mayor of my hometown of Whitby and a good friend of my father's, ironically enough. They combined, and a few other local people, to buy the team back and get it keep it here in Kingston. And they became the Frontenacs, the old Eastern Professional Hockey League name at that time. And it's been like that ever since.
Now, there's been a slight change, well, a major change, I guess you could say, as of last fall, where the station that you are broadcasting on is now different from the station you were doing the games on last year.
Yep.
And so you've got a wider coverage area to look at.
Yep, it was when I came here in 80, it was, you were there with the CFMK broadcasting there and the old CKWS AM station. So then Chorus came in a few years later to buy it up, and it stayed that way right through. But we, I guess they left the stations back in, or left the hockey team back in about, 9 years ago before this season. So it was up for grabs, and the station out of Napanee, My FM Napanee, came in and did an outstanding job. I was very happy with them. They were very good to me, and I hope I was good to them back again, and they were sorry to see me go, I know. But it was just this past summer that Chorus Entertainment came back and made a great offer to the hockey team, and it was just too good to turn down for them, so they've gone back to Chorus here now.
You are in a relatively interesting position to have analyzed the way the game has been played over these 40-odd years to get a sense of how the OHL has evolved. Can you give us some sense as to whether there's been any kind of change in the league and the way the game's played?
Yeah, just right now it's a business 24/7 and 12 months a year. Before, it was just during the hockey season. It would start up in September. You played 8 or 10 exhibition games, and then the season would start about the second last week in September. You'd go to mid-March, and then the playoffs would start. Once you were out, well, then that was it for the season, and you wouldn't see one another or wouldn't have anything to do with the hockey team until probably about mid or late August, when the guys are starting to filter back into town, and training camp opens always around Labor Day weekend, somewhere around in there. But now there's just so much going on with the drafts going on. OHL draft is in the spring, then the NHL draft with some of your guys being drafted away are in June. So now it's a business, and that's all these major junior A teams now in the OHL. It's a business 24/7 and 12 months a year.
What about the on-ice game?
Oh, it's, Matty, we'd be here till midnight mentioning all the things there about the changes, the rule changes, just the size of the kids nowadays are just enormous. Like I was hoping I would be the size of the kids here these days back in high school when I was just not much taller than what I am right now. Boy, the average size and weight of your junior players now are, at least 6'200". Back then, 72, it was about my size here, 5'5", and a little bit of nothing, soaking wet. So it has gone that way where it is, and the speed of the game, the dynamics of it, the broadcasting, everything else there, it's just nonstop. But I think a huge change, and I mentioned this to you the other day when we were having coffee, was a trainer now is an athletic therapist, and he's almost a doctor, pretty well a doctor nowadays. Mm-hmm. Then back in even 80 and earlier, back in 72 when I first started with Oshawa, trainer of the team was just kind of a part-time guy who was, he had a full-time job, and he did this kind of on the side. And he was good with Band-Aids and, splinting something up until the doctor could come in to see what was really wrong with the guy. But now now with concussions and everything else, these athletic therapists have a degree and everything else, and they are very well qualified.
Players are bigger and faster. What about the skill level of the players these days as compared with years ago?
Yeah, I think right now I'm seeing the last couple of years in just the OHL, I don't think it's as good. It kind of goes in cycles every year, and same with the team. Right now we're struggling a bit because last year we had a very good team, went right to the Eastern Conference Finals with the OHL, and then we lost our number one goaltender and about 4 of our top 6 point getters from the league, either to graduation because of age or they've gone on to pro hockey somewhere. So that happens in the OHL pretty well about on a 3-year cycle. So you can be looking forward to be in a rebuilding position about every 3 to 4 years, pretty well that cycle. But it's it's gone, it's, as I say, you really rebuild that way, and you try to build up to, keep your fan based there. But they know that, we went for it kind of last year. They're all out to kind of go for it. It's the general manager at that time admitted that, he's kind of damned if he doesn't, damned if you do, because if it backfires on you, which unfortunately it did, that then you lose a lot of players. But on the other hand, if you'd won all this, well, like Hamilton did, and they did pretty well the same thing too. They traded away a lot of their big players, and they've lost a lot of big stars as well.
Let's come back and put you on the bus and describe for our listeners what kind of distance you have to travel with the teams that the Kingston Frontenacs play, because you do all the away games as well.
Yeah, travel on the bus and have, as we say, somebody asked me last spring here, Doug Jeffries from CKWS TV, when we were doing an interview, unfortunately, after the Humboldt crash out in Saskatchewan, that asked me how many miles I figure that I've ridden on a team bus, and I couldn't even begin, I don't think, to figure that out. Millions, let's put it that way. So if I only had $1 for every mile on that bus, I wouldn't be sitting here today. I'm sorry, Dave.
No,
we'd be doing it on a phone from, Bahamas or Florida or somewhere, to be very honest with you. But, yeah, Sault Ste. Marie is the furthest north. They tie that in with a trip to Sudbury and North Bay. And then now we go into the States as well, into Flint and Saginaw, Michigan. There's a song there, isn't there? Saginaw, yeah. And also
song, yeah.
At Erie, Pennsylvania as well. So stay
That's
away from
a lot of
areas.
driving.
Yeah, our bus driver that we've had, Rob Cook, for over 25 years, an outstanding job and not one incident, thank God, even close to anything. There's been a lot of storms, etc., where you're going, what are we doing out here in the middle of this? But he gets through it. He's been fantastic.
You need a guy who knows what he's doing.
He sure does.
We were talking about the players that are in the league right now. Let's talk about the road trips and the eating that goes on.
I can't talk about those things.
Let's talk about the
change
meals
the names,
that you
okay,
guys, you guys must eat a lot on the road.
Well, they do. I have my fare, but boy, to see these guys, you're talking at least 20 to 24 players, and the size of these kids and the way they eat, it's just unbelievable. It's I can imagine these pro teams and pro football teams, the amount of food they put away, but these guys do a great job as well. But one thing I will say, and it's always been this way with the Springer family anyway, Doug Springer owns the Frontenacs, we get the absolute best hotel accommodations and food arrangements on the road, both before and after games. And sometimes we're gone from a Thursday to a Sunday, so you're in a hotel for 3 days or so. So 3 meals a day pretty well in a hotel. Nothing but the best. A lot of chicken parm and everything else. But, nothing but the best. I cannot complain whatsoever about the accommodations or the food that we get on the road.
For those people who may not be aware, the kids who play in this particular league, describe them age-wise.
They're anywhere from 16 to 20. Your overage players, as they're called, are 20 years old. You're allowed 3 of those on a team. And once you are playing that last year of 20 years old, you can go to the professional leagues, or if you've been drafted by a pro team, then you go to their NHL team if you're lucky, or one of their American Hockey League affiliates. But if you haven't been drafted, then you're free to go. You're a free agent. You go wherever. A lot go to Canadian college team, etc. But that's pretty well the age group that you're looking at, 16 to 20.
So these kids would be in high school and college, university.
Yeah, 16, 17-year-olds, and then the 18, 19-year-olds are, we've had guys going in their first year at Queen's here or St. Lawrence College.
So a lot of these people would be from out of town who would be billeted with families? Is that the way it works?
Yeah, that's been going on for years. Huge part of these guys' lives are your second family, and they're a lot have been repeat billet families for years. There are some there still now that billeted back in the Kingston Canadian days, back in the 70s and the 80s.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned trainers before when we were talking about some of the changes that have come about over the 40-odd years you've been doing this. One of the issues that you hear a lot about in the news, whether you know hockey or not, is the whole issue of concussions and the diagnosis of concussions and what the teams have to do with the players when that happens or when they suspect it happens. How has that changed?
Yeah, tremendously. That's been probably the best change that has occurred over the years. Years ago, you had guys who they get a hit on the head or in between periods they have a bit of a headache, take a couple of aspirin, and you're right back out there. You know, talk to the old pro hockey players of years ago, back in the 60s, 70s. They said, yeah, we probably had a few, but just got a pill from the trainer and away you went. You went back out there. You couldn't afford to take time off because at that time in the old 6-team NHL, there was always guys just waiting for somebody to get hurt or retire or somebody, and there was somebody right there to take your job away from you. So right now it's huge that way, and they really watch that very closely. If they suspect a kid has a concussion or has been hit in the head either with a check or a puck or a stick or whatever, they go back to what they call a quiet room. It's really part of the dressing room. Stay in there for a good half hour to an hour at least, and just they put him through a whole test. You know, ask him his name, where are you, all sorts of simple questions, and depending on what kind of answers they're getting back, then either he can go back out and play, and if they're not the answers that they expect back from him, then he's staying there. He's not going back out onto the ice.
More follow-up, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. You mentioned Max Jackson before. You mentioned Doug Jeffries when we were talking earlier. And for those of us who have been around Kingston a long time, Max Jackson's name is one that you would know for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I remember him coming in to do a sportscast on radio at 6 o'clock in the morning and ending his day by doing the late TV sports at 11 o'clock and coming in and out all day long and doing the hockey games. Doug, I hear, and I don't know Doug very well, but I hear from other people that Doug has a reputation, like Max did, of promoting local sports and giving them the highlights that they deserve when he's talking on radio or television. Tell us about those two.
Yeah, tremendous. Max was just great when I first came here. I couldn't believe the hours he was putting in, and then I did pretty well the same thing. I was in early in the morning, did a 6 to about noon hour shift, then do the hockey game, and management kind of changed around. And so one day one of the new managers came in and he said, okay, he says, explain this to me now. He says, you're in at 6 o'clock in the morning. You're here until noon. You do the early morning sports every half hour. Then you do the noon hour sports. Then you get on a bus. You go up to Peterborough. You get back at 1 o'clock in the morning. You get back in here at 6 o'clock. Then that Friday night you do a home game as well besides all this. And I said, yeah. He says, that's inhumane. He says, that stops here now. So, but it was just the job. You did that, and you just went ahead and did it. And it didn't really hit me until you'd say you had 3 games on a weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I had pretty well Mondays were my day off. That was it. And then you'd be right back at it on a Tuesday. But that was your job. You did it.
What about Doug? What's his reputation around town?
Yeah, sorry, I got kind of derailed there about the local sports. Max was just tremendous at that for years. Dougie, same way. He and Mike Postovit really promote the local sports, and especially at the high school, Queens here and St. Lawrence level, everything like that, especially in the lower parts of it. Sure, they cover the Frontenacs, of course, and the Voyageurs and hockey, but also do a lot as far as high school and university and college sports are concerned, too.
Okay, we're getting near the end of the program, and I thought I would do what I call a lightning round. So these are just off the top of your head questions. And we didn't brief you on this in advance.
No.
Favorite NHL team?
Leafs.
The Leafs. No debate, just the Leafs.
Have been since the early mid-'60s. Dickie Duff was my favorite player.
That goes back a ways.
Thank you, Dave. Yes, thank you. Okay, carry on. This isn't lightning. There's a bit of thunder coming in here now.
Aside from the players who are on the team right now, your favorite former Frontenac /Raider /Canadian?
Chris Clifford.
Chris Clifford.
He's now a well-known lawyer in town.
Goalie?
Yes. First goaltender in O.H.L. history to score a goal, and I called it.
Did you?
Yes, sir.
Favorite activity on the bus when you're doing the big trip?
Reading.
Any kind of book?
Mostly sports
books.
Toronto Sun Sports, the best, and Hockey News magazine.
How many cups of coffee a day when you're on a game day?
Ooh, well, I start out with 2 in the morning at home, and then when I get to the game, just before the game, have one. And also, Paul Watts, my color guy, brings me a coffee at the end of the first period, just before the second period starts. So only 2 or 3 tops.
And the last question, favorite meal when you're on the road?
Chicken parm, yeah.
Oh, okay.
That wasn't so tough.
I know. Well, it could have been tougher, but you know.
Okay.
And that will just about do it for our program today, Jim. It's
Fantastic.
been a pleasure.
Been great.
Enjoy the program.
Enjoyed it very much, yeah.
Yeah, good conversation. All right, sir, you take care. Be safe on the road and enjoy yourself. And thanks very much again.
David, thanks very much. Hope we can do it again sometime.
All righty. Theme music for the program is Stasis Oasis, a tune written and performed by Kingston musician Tim Aylesworth. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions about any of our episodes, please send a note to the Kingstonian Podcast Facebook page. This is Dave Cunningham from Kingston, Ontario. Thank you for listening. Until next time.